Hey YouTube, this is my RecRoomMasters Sit Down Arcade Pedestal. I think it's pretty neat, and I thought I'd show you guys what I've done with it. I've owned it for about a year, and I think it's become a pretty good turnkey solution for a lot of different games, so I thought I'd show it off. So what I have is the Xarcade Sit Down Pedestal with the optional cutout for an Xarcade Tankstick. The Xarcade Tankstick, I have replaced the buttons with Sanwa Buttons and replaced the joysticks with IL competition level joysticks. And then I opted to create some custom graphics for it. And this is a service that RecRoomMasters provides. What they do is they provide you a Photoshop template file. I was able to import that into paint.net and create this graphic, and then I emailed the graphic off to them, and they printed it off and sent it to me, and I was just able to overlay it on my Tankstick. And it's pretty cool because kind of the whole premise with me originally building this machine was NFL Blitz and NBA Showtime. They have a vertical arcade cab called the Xtension, which is like $2,000 to $3,000 in good shape when they're in good shape. And those are the two games that I kind of focused on when I originally started building this machine. And you'll see when I open it up, one of the things I have driving this is a Sega Dreamcast, and Sega Dreamcast had both those games. So right there, you know, in my mind, I was able to augment a $2,000 arcade machine by building this. Ultimately, I probably spent a little more than that, but I can also do a whole lot more. So then, over on the side, I have 3 power strips in here. I have an always-on power strip that's the one power going into my cab. And then right here I have 2 Belkin Conserve smart power strips. And the way that these work is these have little wireless receivers or transceivers. And what they'll do is you can remotely switch on the power strips so that I'm not having to go down there and actually turn the units on. And then the TV, I have a Samsung 43-inch 4K HDR TV, and this thing's just killer compared to, you know, what you would typically fit in a vertical cab. You know, you get a lot of real estate, and RecRoomMasters actually recommends like a 40-inch, but I was able to do a 43-inch without any of the bezel being cut off or anything. And then up here, I mounted a new Sonos Beam. And the Sonos Beam, what's cool about it is it supports HDMI ARC. So I can control the beam through my TV's remote. And I can also, when I'm not using the cab, I can send my music to this, which is really cool. And the way that I mounted it was I bought the Sonos Beam wall mount, and then I bought a generic mount that fits on the back of the TV, and the two of those in tandem, I just perfectly got it mounted up here. And it's kind of funny because you couldn't mount it any higher, so like it just barely ended up being perfect. And then on the back here, I don't know if you're really going to be able to see it, but I have a LED light strip that's hooked into the USB port of the TV, and it's also dimmable. So whenever I turn the TV on, there's a glow effect on the back wall behind the TV. Okay, so then in here, I have an Xbox One S controller, and I have the Xarcade switch box. So what this allows me to do is it allows me to switch between 4 systems as far as which one is having the Tankstick connected to it. So I'm going to put it in position A so I can show this to you. Inside of here, I have 3 systems hooked up. I have a Sega Dreamcast with a USB GDrom in it to boot all my games off of USB, so there's no messing with discs. I have a Pico PSU in it. I have a Noctua mod for the fan. Then I have the Behar Brothers Akura box that takes the VGA output and spits it out in HDMI. And then down here I have a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus running RetroPie. And then I have an Xbox One S. And all 3 of these systems can be easily hooked up to the X-Arcade Tankstick. And then another thing I did with the Tankstick was, this was kind of, I don't know if RecRoomMasters just overlooked this or what, but in here I had one of my coworkers was nice enough to cut out a couple boards, and that I then Gorilla Glued and then together, and then I wrapped them with gaff tape. And the reason I did this was, when you push down on the front of the Tankstick would often tilt up. So by having this little spacer in here, it doesn't happen anymore. So now this thing is just rock solid when you're leaning on it. So I'll set my camera up here so you can see what I'm doing. And then, so I'll take the TV's remote and I turn on the TV. And then I've got it on the game input. Because back here I have a passive HDMI switch that has the Dreamcast and the the Raspberry Pi connected into it. And then I have the other, there's 3 HDMI inputs total. So one of them is RetroPie and Dreamcast. And then the other one is doing HDMI ARC with the Sonos Beam, so that I can control the volume of the beam through my TV remote. And then the other one is hooked up to the Xbox One S, and I gave it its own discrete one because it can do HDR, even though it's still only 1080. Eventually I'll put a Scorpio in here, and then I'll be able to do 4K with HDR. But right now I'm just doing the S in here. And the other thing that's cool about the remote is this thing is all Bluetooth, so you don't got to point it at it or anything. So now that I have it on, you can also see that the backlight is going. That's that LED strip that I have controlled by when the TV's on. So then I go over here and this is already on switch A, this is already on position A to have the Tankstick hooked up to the Dreamcast. Then I hit the button for the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast should fire up. Which is awesome. I never had a Dreamcast when I was young, so now it's pretty awesome having a Dreamcast now. So then you've got all these awesome games on here: Marvel vs. Capcom 2, NBA Hoops, NBA Showtime. NBA Hoops was actually never in the arcade, it was only ever on Dreamcast, but it's the sequel to NBA Showtime. You've got NFL Blitz 2000, 2001. You've got a bunch of great shmups like Giga Wing, Gunbird, Mars Matrix. This Under Defeat game is actually really awesome. So I'll just fire up like NBA Showtime. And another thing that's cool is the Dreamcast and the Xbox. I'm just going to turn the volume down. The Dreamcast and the Xbox both have the same ABXY layout. So I mapped them, or so they map the same way with the X-Arcade setup, but then I also mapped RetroPie to be the same. So across all 3 of my systems I have consistent button layouts. You know, and then the RetroPie can also use the trackball, which is really cool for like Golden Tee or mini golf or some of the bowling games. So I'll turn the volume back up a little bit and play a little NBA Showtime. And it's a little off-centered, and that's a product of the Akura. I think it's a product of the Akura plus the TV. but it's not a big deal for, you know, the awesomeness you're getting for the price. So then I'm gonna select the Raptors because they had Vince Carter and he was amazing back then. And I'm just kneeling because I'm using the chair for the camera, but it's awesome that you can pull up like computer chairs and play. Sandy and McGrady.
The Toronto Raptors take on the Utah Jazz. Greg Ostertag, Jeff Hornacek, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter. Here's the tip. This is the matchup everyone's been waiting for. With the jumper. That was a cheap shot. It takes two to tango. Twisting and turning. He shoots.
There we go. Sweet spot. I think I'll end on that. So turn that off. So Dreamcast turned off. Put this in. Put my little switch in position B to hook up the Tankstick to the RetroPie. Then I'll fire up the RetroPie. So what's really cool about this is the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus can do a lot of older MAME. But once you get to like where the games need CHD files, the Raspberry Pi, it becomes not powerful enough. Even the games that play in like MAME 2010, MAME 2003, they're kind of slow. So what's cool is the Dreamcast game, or the Dreamcast has a lot of those games that are kind of like a generation after what this is able to do. So here I'll do mini golf ones. Mini golf is pretty cool. And what's cool too is the Tankstick gives you some extra buttons. So on the left and right hand side, you've got like insert coin buttons. And then if you do like insert coin button plus the start button, it backs you out of the game. So it's not like you're ever hooking up a keyboard or anything. You're only ever like hooking up a keyboard when you set it up. I'll do one more. I was gonna end on a high note again, but then if I want to exit out, I do insert coin and player 1, and that exits me out, and then I can just turn it off. Then I'll put it on position 3. It's a little different to get into the Xbox. The Xbox, I hit the home button on the controller to turn it on versus the switch on the side. And the other thing that's nice is with the Xbox, if you want to play a traditional game, you can just have the controller back here and play. So it's pretty versatile in that you can do both, but I'm just going to turn the Xbox on, and then I'm going to switch to the input for the Xbox. Then it's logging me in, and now I can play my games. And a lot of my arcade games I like buy digitally so that they're just on here. Then I would fire up Skyforce Reloaded. This is a really awesome shoot 'em up. And this is cool because I get that full screen modern graphic play. So I've got like old MAME stuff, I've got a little newer Dreamcast stuff, and then I've got, you know, modern day Xbox One. And this is a really great game. I'll pause it. And then another thing that's nice is I run all my cable TV through the HD Home Run. So I've got that app on here. I also have like YouTube on here, but I can watch my cable TV, and I can get into my DVR and watch my DVR. And then when I want to, just listen to music, I can do it through the Sonos. So it's a really cool arcade machine for not a lot of money, respectively, compared to what you could spend. And I think it looks really nice because it's all brand new. The other thing that's cool about it is if you ever have to move it, you can take the systems out of there, and you can take the Tankstick off, and you can unmount the TV, unmount the soundbar, and when I put it together, you can't see them, but I put like furniture sliders underneath the legs and stuff, so it's really easy to like get through doorways, and you can move it around by yourself. And this thing is like really sturdy. I saw another YouTube review where they said it was heavy enough to be sturdy, but light enough to where you can still manhandle it yourself. And that's totally true. And I also like too that it's got this little shelving up here, so you can put your coasters and your drinks. A lot of the shoot 'em ups and old school games don't take up the whole screen, so you can kind of have them off to the side. And it's cool too that you can just have, like RecRoomMasters suggests a 40-inch screen, and I was able to fit a 43 without cutting any of the screen off or anything. So I'm able to get a lot bigger screen than I could on a vertical cab. Plus, like the Sonos Beam and the screen are still underweight for how much RecRoomMasters suggests for the mount. So I think it's a pretty cool arcade machine, and I just thought I would share it with everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.